Thank you for all coming. That's a few more than we expected, so this is really great. So I'm going to talk a bit about the Alma business case, which is why did we get embarked on this whole project in the first place, really. So to give you a bit of context, in 2011 we had the restructure, which Stephen alluded to, where we brought together the library archives and IT services. And at that point, we also restructured who was in charge of what. So at that point, I moved from being in charge of academic liaison and library systems to being head of content. Content in that instance is all the traditional bibliographic services, acquisitions, cataloguing, and also our library systems, so the library management system and also the digital library. So we brought all those together as head of content. So I started that in 2011. We had the previous information strategy, which already had specific outcomes relating to improved discovery, as Stephen has mentioned, and improving access to all the content, but plus also improving our processes, streamlining things, and improving our staff capability and culture. We've had Aleph since 2002, and you can get into a bit of a silo of how you do things. You all have experienced that. And Aleph, for us, worked quite well. It enabled us to do a lot of things really easily. But the staff were just kind of plodding along, if you like, just being able to do this, do this, do this. And there was no real feeling of we can move on and do things in a new way and sort of any excitement or innovation going on there, because Aleph just did stuff. Staff just did stuff. So I think that's where we were there. We were sort of thinking, what shall we do next? So what did we do next? Soon after I started as head of content, we met up with Christoph and Alex for a meeting about Alma specifically, or the future. And during that, and that was with Sarah, we actually decided, let's go mad and let's really see if we can become early adopters of Alma. So Christoph and Alex did a really good sales job on us. So after we'd had that initial meeting, we looked around, we looked at the detail of Alma, we looked around and sought to see if there was anything else out there. But importantly, we talked to our teams of people on the ground and said, okay, we are ticking over with Aleph. What do you think about moving to a new system? And the initial reaction obviously is, oh my good, why? But we had those conversations about, well, you're always moaning about this bit, or you always wanted to do more here, or you're always thinking, can we do this? And Alma is not really going to go in that direction. So what do you think? So we just had those conversations. We kept going round that little loop. And eventually, the people up in the back row there can tell me I was terrible to make them do it. But eventually, everyone sort of said, well, OK, let's give it a whirl. Let's have a look at this and give it a go. So part of that also then was the business case, and I'll come more onto that in a minute. And we also discussed it with our procurement people in the university. And initially, they were a bit reluctant, and I'll come onto that a little bit as well. We were the first UK library to sign our contract in May 2011. And the European Early Adopter Kick-Off meeting happened in York in July 2011. That brought together most of the UK libraries, but after that meeting, some more came on board, including Manchester. So we actually became a much bigger group of people after that. And that first meeting, we were talking about, this is what Alma looks like, these are the developments we need to make in order to make it work for the UK and for Europe in general. And this is where, as Stephen said, it feels like a lot longer. It's because we started talking about it in February 2011. We had a bit of a hiatus then between July 2011, the kick-off, and the York project kick-off. And it was quite hard during that period just to keep the momentum going and keep people interested, because people actually had got so enthusiastic at that point, unbelievably, that people say, well, can't we start now? Can't we start now? But realistically, we had to fit in with Ex Libris's timescales and the product development timescale. So we kicked off in October 2012. Sarah will talk more about then what happened between then and August 2013, when we actually went live on time. So in the business case, what points did we make there? So this is actually completely lifted from the business case that we made at the time. And it all still seems very relevant, so that's quite good. So it's the normal things when I manage all resources together. Alma was being developed from the ground up, and we saw that as an advantage because we weren't going to be stuck with old ways of thinking, either in the technology used or in the workflows. So we were hopeful that this would give us a much better way of doing things for the future. I'll come back to whether we were successful in all of those things in a bit. It's a cloud solution. We wanted to reduce the IT support that we required locally so that our IT people in the library could spend more time developing the system, doing integrations, developing the front end, that kind of thing. As Stephen says, discoverability is much more important, so we wanted to spend more time thinking about things like that. It uses web-based open interfaces, and our colleagues in IT services basically use that kind of technology, so we were much more interested in getting integrations going. It has a community zone for sharing data, and of course shared services is one of the big things that has come up recently. And we were also promised built-in analytics reports and visualizations. So I guess those are all the normal things that people will be thinking of in a new system. And while Aleph did some of those reasonably okay, there wasn't really a sense of momentum in moving it forward and doing new things. So why become an early adopter, as in not wait for a couple of years and see how it's going, like most of you in this room, being sensible people? Well, we were offered a bit of an advantage on the subscription costs, but that wasn't really the main thing. What we wanted was to have input into the development at an early stage and opportunity to work with international partners on what is a completely brand new system. The opportunity we felt of getting in from the ground and actually really influencing how it was developed was really attractive to us. And the timing, as I've explained before, because we'd had this restructure and I'd just taken over head of content, there's a real drive at that point to change the way we did things in content, particularly, and the search and discovery. So the timing was actually perfect for that, and we thought that this would enable our staff to start thinking in new ways. Rather than try and do new processes and new jobs with the same old system, it would help us free that kind of thing up. So the strategic drivers, the main ones, enabling change, minimizing management costs, modern technology, and being leading edge. So enabling change, we wanted to improve and streamline our processes and enable new, unique, and value-added services. So that is about, a lot of that about digitization, surfacing our unique content in the digital library and special collections and archives, but also just focusing on making things much more easy to find for the users. And part of that is, without spending extra money on staffing, is increased staff capacity by reducing time spent on the old way of doing things. More digitisation, cataloguing of media in the digital library, and we're taking a strong role in our campus research information system, which is Pure in our case. So we're doing a lot of work on data checking and data quality checking for that. We did a lot of that for the REF, and going forward we're making sure that all the publications that the academics deposit into Pure have high quality metadata attached to them. So that's a growing area. So enable us to do all of that, we needed to reduce the time spent on some of the other things. And we wanted to develop our staff capability. As I said before, people were jogging along in a kind of fairly standard way, but we felt, you know, we were wasting their talents in many ways. And so we wanted to introduce more of a culture of continuous improvement and innovation. And we thought Alma would help us do that. Minimising management costs, the cloud. We were really fortunate again in the timing that the university was going to Google Apps for Education. So that was all in the cloud. So the fact that Alma and Primo were in the cloud was neither here nor there. We just needed to make sure it all fitted in terms of the data protection and so forth. But we were already on the route to doing a lot of cloud in the university. So fortunately, we didn't have any issues with that at all. So we were quite lucky there. no more hardware purchase and management costs. So our IT guys really happy that they didn't have to manage boxes anymore. So that was great. And minimising software management. So again, all in the cloud, so all the upgrades and all of that just happen, which is mostly an upside, or occasionally has a downside, which we'll come on to later in the day, I think. We wanted to facilitate shared services, so the community zone and that kind of thing. The technology used was also important. At the time, it was using Java APIs and web services, and that was exactly the technology that our IT enterprise systems people were using and beginning to use even more. They were basically, they've been over the last 3 years transitioning from different technology through into Java and APIs, agile development and that kind of thing. So again, the timing fitted really well with the way that our IT services were moving and the way Alma was doing its being developed. So again, the timing was great in that, from that sense. Community zone, I've already really mentioned. And this will allow us the flexibility to develop our own integrations. And because the technology fits with what our IT services is doing, they will be able to help us with doing those developments and integrations. Leading the edge. At the time, there was no other new generation system available, and I think even now, most people would say Alma is the most developed of the new generation systems. We look around, and it still is ahead of the game. The early adopter, we wanted the influence, and to be part of that community. So to make the decision, just to summarise really, it was a strong strategic fit, which I've mentioned quite a few things there. The timing was good. We're a long-standing Ex Libris customer, and there were no other systems or partnerships really out there. All of those things we told our procurement people when they said you should go out to tender. So those basically were the main points we made in terms of why we didn't want to go out to tender. And in the end, it was agreed that it was an upgrade from Aleph, because Aleph would start being developed less, and Alma would be the path forward. So we got them to agree that we could just do that, which saved a whole bunch of work. So have we met this business case? So enabling change, absolutely we have. And actually, if we took one thing away from this, the fact that it's opened up our ability to change with the times and do new things, and our staff on the ground, and you'll hear a lot of them talking later in this afternoon, is they have changed from just plodding along, doing Aleph, to actually being really creative in the way that they think about the system. So Alma has not been perfect, but what the people on the ground have done is looked at ideas about, it's not perfect, so this doesn't work, but actually, if Ex Libris did this and that, how could they make it better? So our staff have really engaged in that making it better side of things. And we've had Ex Libris, Carmeet came, and some of the developers, and they've been really impressed with our staff who've been presenting this. This is why we think it's a problem, but here's an idea about how it might work better. And our staff have been really impressed, Ex Libris, with their creativity. So I think that's one area I'd like to emphasise a lot, and Sarah will again later, because actually it's the thing that made it work. Managing all resources together, we were a bit cautious in bringing the digital in at the early stages. So we've integrated print and electronic, and we're basically about to embark on the digital. We met our aim, but we need to embark on the digital side now. The reducing local IT costs, absolutely, it absolutely has. So that's brilliant. The analytics and reports, partial. A lot more people are now running and designing reports and finding it much easier. A lot of the colleagues that we're speaking to have designed their own reports, and they can do that instead of it all being a systems librarian task. So lots of people can get involved in that much, much more. It's not quite there yet. There has been some elements that aren't actually in the analytics system. It is improving all the time. One of the key things that was missing has literally just appeared very recently. So it is changing and improving all the time. And you do get nice graphs and reports. And you hear about that later. Meeting future functionality and workflow needs. Again, it's a from the ground up system. So while some things worked much better, some things are not quite as smooth as we think they could be. But again, that's where our staff on the ground have been coming up with ideas, and Ex Libris taking them on board and developing some of those, and there have been a lot of improvements in the last year. The community zone, I think, is a little bit underdeveloped at the moment, but again, it's a brand new system, and there's not been that many people contributing yet. So it will get there. The knowledge base is okay. MARC record quality is a tad patchy at the moment, but there is a group that Ex Libris is working on that whole community zone of catalogue records. The development and code side of it, they've launched relatively recently the development zone and the developer network, so that I envisage will grow quite a lot over the next year or so. And the web-based open interfaces, we managed to quite easily here actually integrate all the things we had with Aleph, so the entry system, the book sorter, the self-issue and self-return, that kind of thing. We haven't done any new ones yet. We really want to do an integration with Aggresso, but that is held up by the finance people rather than us. They're trying to do an upgrade of Aggresso, and that's been delayed, and a whole bunch of things like that has happened. It's on their roadmap. It's nearly at the top of their roadmap. It's very close, so hopefully we're hoping to get to that. The other thing actually with that is we're hoping, because we have our own in-house reading list system, that our IT people in enterprise systems are really interested in looking at that again, because they wrote it in the first place, and seeing if we can do a much better integrated thing via Alma, replacing PackTracker, rolling in our resource list software into something which they can support. So we're going to be looking at that over the next year. So that we'll be looking at some quite interesting things there. And our IT colleagues are really keen to do that. So we're hoping that this will release all of that now that we've got settled in. So then just finally, there are some strategic issues, which I don't know how many of you have looked at the UK list of top 10 things. There are some specific functional things in there, which people will no doubt pop up during the rest of the day. But we also identified some various strategic issues, which I can talk about more later this afternoon in my session. Around workflow improvements, I've alluded to analytics, the agile product improvement, and communications generally between us and Ex Libris. And we're going to have a meeting with the senior Ex Libris people at Igloo in a couple of weeks' time around all these points here. So any conversations about that this afternoon will be great, because we can feed those directly into the senior Ex Libris people in a couple of weeks' time.